There's been a mass beaching of whales on South Australia's Yorke Peninsula. Locals first spotted the sperm whales on a beach near Aradrossan yesterday morning. 7 whales are dead. One of the mammals is still stranded in shallow water.
Rossan residents spotted a pod of frolicking whales on Sunday. Yesterday, they woke to a distressing sight. 6 sperm whales stranded on Parara Beach, all of them dead.
You love to come and watch them swimming, but when you see them like this, it's terrible.
Oh, a bit sad. It's a bit of a sad loss, really.
Late yesterday, a 7th whale was found dead in shallow water further north. Another was spotted alive, swimming 500 metres offshore. Experts say while it's not unusual for sperm whales to be in the area, a mass beaching is rare.
First time I've ever seen anything like this in the 20 years I've been here.
Experts say the pod may have swam too close to shore when one of the whales got into trouble and called for help.
Because whales are so communal, one of them is in trouble and so goes into shallow water so it can rest on the bottom and breathe more easily. Then when the tide goes out, it starts calling and all the others come to help and they get stuck too. Authorities
are now trying to determine how to remove the carcasses. They weigh up to 50 tonnes each, so it could take some time.
Moving them is a logistic nightmare, but that's the sorts of things we have to discuss.
The public's been asked to stay at least 20 metres away from the whales. The carcasses will attract sharks and could be carrying infectious diseases. Nick Markham, 7 News.
A West Coast fishing identity believes oil exploration could be to blame for Yorke Peninsula's mass whale stranding. Researchers from the museum are on the case. They're also trying to work out whether a calf may have been orphaned by the tragedy.
It's a whale of a task dissecting a 40-tonne marine animal.
We are in the process of taking off the jaws in order to get the teeth. We would like to collect the full skeleton of one animal and possibly the head of another.
6 of the 7 whales have been identified as female. It's hoped testing of genetic samples will shed light on what caused the mass stranding. Some experts believe one of the females may have been separated from her calf.
We will be doing some cutting around the mammary glands, hopefully seeing whether one of the animals was lactating or not.
Port Lincoln tuna baron Hagen Steers suspects sonar oil exploration in the Bights to blame.
The sounds could interfere with the sonar system of whales, and might scare them in some way, so they change their pattern of immigration.
A decision's yet to be made on what will happen to the remains.
They're going to have to bury them in some way because obviously they don't want rotting flesh around, possibly bringing disease.
If they are left to rot, an exclusion zone could be in place for 90 days. Local businesses are fuming, fearing the smell alone could ruin the tourist season.
People just won't want to come, and the smell, like coming into summer, northerly winds, it's not going to be good.
Described it as a major emergency at an apartment building which was being built. Sky's Gamal Famboule joins us now. And Gamal, from these shots you can see the proximity to the highway, Route 101, which is very, very close to this building, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And if you look on Twitter, for example, what you're getting from people is how shocked they are. People saying they've never seen a fire like this, they've never seen anything like this in their area. So this is Route 101, extremely busy. It's been closed in both directions, and also the interchange for Route 101 and Route 110 has also been closed. Now, according to the local fire department, somewhere in the region of 200, 250 firefighters are currently at the scene trying to battle this blaze.
I mean, look, these shots here are astonishing, aren't they? I mean, it's hard to believe that this is the centre of Los Angeles.
Dawn of the Dead. Downtown LA on fire. I can feel the heat.
Do you feel it? That's insanity.
planes believed to be Israeli struck inside Syria on Sunday. It happened in a Damascus suburb, according to the Syrian government and an opposition group. However, the two sides differ on the target of those strikes. No casualties were reported, and Israel has yet to confirm or deny the reports, which is not unusual. Let's get more now from our senior international correspondent, Ben Wiedemann. He is in Jerusalem. What more do we know about what may or may not have happened involving Israeli jets over Syria, Ben?
Well, the basic facts, Hala, are that sometime late yesterday afternoon, there were two airstrikes, one on a facility near the Damascus International Airport, one near the town of Dimas, which is on the highway between Damascus and the Lebanese border. Now, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the target at the airport was some sort of storage facility. The Syrian army, however, put out a statement saying that that site was a civilian site. We don't know the precise nature of the other target that was hit in Dimas. However, it's been widely speculated here in Israel that the intended target was some sort of sophisticated anti-aircraft missile system, possibly coming from Iran and destined for Hezbollah in Lebanon. That certainly is what is being speculated upon, but Israeli officials are neither confirming nor denying that these were Israeli airstrikes, although we did hear the Israeli intelligence minister saying that Israel has a policy of doing what must be done to stop the transfer of advanced weapons systems to what they call terrorist groups. And since January of 2013, there have been a variety of strikes on targets in Syria, around Damascus and also the seaport town of Latakia, widely attributed to Israel.
One of the latest developments with another night of protests in the East Bay. Thousands of protesters taking over freeways, train tracks, and streets. The demonstrators protesting the decisions by grand juries to not indict white police officers in the deaths of unarmed black men. Interstate 80 shut down last night in Emeryville, right by IKEA and Powell Streets, as you see here. And the protesters then moved on to surface streets and outside the Ross store at the Powell Street Plaza in Emeryville. The CHP saying more than 150 of those protesters were arrested for blocking the freeway, and you can see them lined up along the building. As many as 1,500 protesters were out on the streets last night.
It's calmer this morning in Berkeley after the chaos. KRON 4's Will Tran is live there now with more on the situation as it stands at this hour. Hi, Will.
Good morning, Doria. Yes, there's a backup now in Emeryville, but it has nothing to do with the protesters. That's your normal morning commute. But yesterday, this place came to a standstill in both directions when all of a sudden those protesters, and they never make an announcement on what they plan to do, it just usually happens, they hopped onto the freeway after they broke down a fence. You can see a fence here. They have fencing all up and down I-80, but not at this location, but they got through. The CHP officers had to watch what was going on, and then it took them actually about 3 hours to get them off at the freeway. Let's show you some video of those officers. This is from high above. You can see what it did. The CHP officers, they didn't know how long it was going to last. Perhaps they would have went to the other side of the freeway, but no, it took a lot longer, to the point where they had to call in mutual aid. There was a woman who was pregnant, stuck in this traffic area, that she had to call the ambulance. The ambulance then took her to the hospital. So not only does this have to do with the indictments, but people who have nothing to do with it, they also were impacted. And then they got back onto the city streets in Emeryville, at the Berkeley-Emeryville border. Let's show you video of that. This is at Ross. They did not make the arrests onto the freeway. Instead, they just monitored what was going on. Once they got back onto the city streets near the Ross in that shopping center, that's when the CHP officers moved in. They had their buses waiting to go, and that's when they ultimately made the 150 arrests. We have learned this morning that the Berkeley Police Department, and they seem to be at the center of all of these protests, they also made 9 arrests themselves. The good news is none of the drivers were injured, and none of the protesters, as far as we are hearing, they were not injured as well. A lot of people have reached out to me on Twitter claiming police brutality. We will try to get reaction from the police department, but as far as we know, none of those police officers, CHP or mutual aid, they were injured in this. It seems like it was more disruptive than destructive from the previous couple of days. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Will. Mark?
And more on what happened with Amtrak last night. The train's running this morning, service back to normal, but you see protesters here stopping an Amtrak train by lying on the tracks. They also parked a truck on the tracks over near the Alston train crossing. But again, service now back to normal this morning.
Violence erupting for a second night in Northern California after 500 protesters swarm an Oakland freeway. A standoff with police officers who eventually deployed tear gas and arrest a small number of people. In Berkeley, demonstrators looting multiple businesses. A peaceful protester trying to stop a looter was hit in the face with a hammer.
A guy with a crowbar comes in, they start stealing stuff, like as much as they can get.
This after a grand jury decided last week not to indict Officer Daniel Pantaleo in Eric Garner's chokehold death.
Peace is the message. We don't want any violence, but keep on keeping on.
Just the night before, a group of agitators in Berkeley, California broke windows and threw what they could at the hundreds of local police in full riot gear. Some demonstrators saying on social media police were firing rubber bullets. Police have yet to comment. In New York City over the weekend, a few hundred people clashed with police, staging die-ins at Grand Central Station, Apple's flagship store, and Macy's in Herald Square. The national outcry even hitting the field. Washington Redskins defensive lineman Chris Baker making the hands up, don't shoot gesture after a play Sunday. And several NFL and an NBA player wearing I Can't Breathe t-shirts. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio tells ABC News this week his predecessor, Rudy Giuliani, fundamentally misunderstands the reality.
You cannot look at an incident in Missouri, another incident in Cleveland, Ohio, and another incident in New York City, all happening in the space of weeks, and act like there's not a problem.
Giuliani blasted de Blasio on Fox News last week, saying it's, quote, racist to not acknowledge black-on-black crime, after de Blasio said he tells his biracial son to take special care around police.
You should spend 90% of your time talking about the way they're actually probably going to get killed, which is by another black.
Garner's widow told NBC's Meet the Press she fears for her children.
I'm so afraid of what could happen to them in the street by the police. I'm afraid of the police.
Are you?
Breaking overnight, a violent standoff with New York police at a prominent synagogue in Brooklyn caught on tape.
Step away, over here.
It was just before 2 a.m. when the suspect, an adult male, stabbed a man who was praying inside in the neck, according to WABC.
I see a student with a bloody face. Here he's saying, help me, doesn't know what to do. He's in shock. So I tell him, come quick. I bring him over, I help him go outside.
Hands up. Hands up.
Initially obeying police commands, the suspect places the knife on a desk, the officer holstering his gun to secure the scene. The incident appears to be over. But then, in a sudden move, the suspect reaches back and grabs the weapon. Police on edge as the suspect starts walking towards the officer, knife in hand. According to police, the suspect then lunges toward an officer, and that's when police fatally shot the suspect in the torso. The violence unfolding inside this Jewish synagogue, Chabad Lubavitch headquarters, offering daily prayer service and a study hall for religion. It's not known why the man entered the Jewish congregation or what prompted his attack.
Who's this guy?
The stabbing victim is currently being treated.
Well, Typhoon Hagupit has been making a very slow crawl across the Philippines for the last couple of days. You can see just some very strong wind and flooding. That's going to be one of the biggest problems with this system. A lot of places have seen over a foot of rain. I mean, look at these people. Look what they have to walk through. I mean, there's water everywhere. That's been a huge problem because of how slow the system has been moving. Now, the good news is that it finally starts to pick up some steam as it moves out into the South China Sea. It's already been downgraded to a tropical storm. It continues the weakening trend, but flooding could be an issue for Vietnam by late week.
Queensland is preparing for more fierce weather with thunderstorms forecast every day this week. Danger was narrowly avoided in Toowoomba when a funnel formed above the town yesterday, but fortunately it didn't touch the ground. A destructive water spout in Hervey Bay did make landfall, twisting metal around power lines. New South Wales is also being lashed by strong weather fronts. Yesterday, streets in Sydney were flooded in the heavy downpour, with more rain and the risks of storms expected most of this week.
After a night of fierce electrical storms, more wild weather is expected to hit the southeast over the next 72 hours. Bianca Stone is in our Gold Coast Bureau. How's the clean-up progressing, Bianca?
Well, Katrina, while the storms looked spectacular, fortunately the Gold Coast was relatively unscathed. The SES received 64 calls for help. One man ended up in hospital after he was struck by lightning in one of the most unlikely places. Standing with his wife in the kitchen, Rob Wecker thought he was safe from the storm.
Saw a massive streak of light come through the kitchen and hit me. And she just sort of went, whoa, you know, what was that? And I just said, I think I just got hit by lightning.
The lightning bolt struck his elbow, travelled through his arm and out of his hand.
I had a bit of fluttering in my chest and a bit of numbness and tingling in my hand, but other than that, no pain. I was very lucky.
It could have been this bolt caught on camera, striking Burleigh Waters as the storm rolled in. There were 17,000 lightning strikes during the wild weather over southeast Queensland.
Another day, another...
The bolts often crash down far ahead of the storm front. The sky lit up for hours over Brisbane and Ipswich. Firefighters are investigating whether the fierce electrical assault caused this fire, which destroyed a home at Roadvale near Boonah. There was more damage at Tugun when a tree crashed through a house. It happened during an intense downpour. 74 millimetres fell there, 56 at Benogan in the Gold Coast hinterland. So much water, at times it was hard to see the road. floodwater rose around cars at Nerang. Lawrence Drive was submerged.
People trying to get little marinas through as four-wheel drives.
Today, the southeast enjoyed a brief reprieve from the wild weather, but it's only temporary. More storms are expected to menace the region over the next 3 days. Bianca Stone, 7 News.
For more now, we're joined by meteorologist Tony Auden.
Well, Rod, while it was quiet in the southeast today, it'll be a very different story towards the end of the week. Tomorrow, it all starts to ramp up. A strong upper trough will sweep through western Queensland and destabilise an already volatile and humid atmosphere. So we'll see storms developing through central parts in the afternoon. They'll sweep towards the coast later in the day and spread into heavy rain overnight and into Friday. The southeastern quarter of Queensland is likely to see widespread falls of 50 millimetres, with some locations pushing well over 100 millimetres, and there could be some more severe storms in the mix too. Rod, I'll have the full forecast soon.
Mentioning preparations underway all around the Bay Area. It was almost 9 years ago that San Anselmo was underwater, basically, from all the heavy rains that we had from a big storm. Jackie Sisto live there now, where people are preparing once again. Jackie.
Absolutely, Mark. You know, we're probably, 12, 15 hours away from the storm. The rain hasn't started falling, but the streets of San Anselmo are already lined with sandbags as people prepare for the upcoming storm. I'm in downtown San Anselmo, and basically you see this row of businesses right here. The San Anselmo Creek runs right behind it, and it is notorious for flooding. In fact, we've seen some of the worst flooding here over the last decade or so in the entire Bay Area. In fact, let's take a look at what it looked like back on New Year's Day of 2006, when the entire downtown was inundated by flood waters. Absolutely amazing. Decimated lots of businesses and residents around this area. Now, since they've done that, or since they had that flood, there has been some work done on the San Anselmo Creek. A street sweeper's going by, obviously trying to clear some of the leaves off the bushes right now, or off the street as we talk. Anyway, they've done a lot of work on the creek to prepare it, but still residents here who lived through that flood back in 2005 are preparing, and I had a chance to talk to one earlier this morning.
And so I walked outside, and I saw the mud was, like chocolate mud was working its way up the street, and it wasn't too far from her apartment, and it was coming around. There's a creek in the back, and it was coming around there, so she was getting it from both ends. So we started picking up furniture and rolling up carpet and getting ready for it to flood, and then it came within 1/4 of an inch of coming into the house, and that was the highest it got for us.
What do you guys do now to prepare?
I'll get some sandbags today, maybe, if I listen to the weather and think it's going to happen, then I'll get all ready for it to flood again.
Now, we were talking about the San Anselmo Creek, but there's all kinds of creeks up here in the North Bay. In fact, here's one from a drop cam of the Ross Valley Fire Department has this. This is the Fairfax Creek, and you can go on to our website. We have links set up to the Ross Valley Fire Department. They monitor these creeks. Every 15 minutes, they have these cameras around so you can monitor what the situation is. It's a great resource. Back out here, sandbags are available all over the Bay Area, especially here in the North Bay. So if you're somebody who's worried about the flood waters coming up over the next couple days, get out and get your sandbags. Now's the time to do it. As you can see out here, Mark, a lot of these residents, a lot of these business owners aren't waiting for the waters to come up. They're trying to get prepared now. Mark?
Millions of people will feel the wrath of a nor'easter today. The powerful storm is blowing up the Atlantic coasts from the Carolinas to Maine. Heavy rain expected along the shore and up to 2 feet of snow expected inland. Winds could top 60 miles an hour.
A powerful nor'easter packing heavy snow and torrential rain slams the Northeast overnight. The storm reportedly to blame for at least 2 deaths, one in New York, the other in Maine, as it bears down on the eastern seaboard. Upstate New York and Vermont seeing upwards of 12 inches of snow in the past 24 hours. And may get 10 more before this week is over. Further south, officials issuing flood warnings from Boston to New York. Record-setting rain in New York City nearing 3 inches. The most rain ever on Tuesday's date, December 9th.
We're stuck at home, until this dies down.
A bad day for air travel, too. Over 1,000 flights canceled on Tuesday and more than 2,500 delays. Near Boston, Massachusetts, freezing rain creating treacherous black ice on roadways.
It was terrifying, actually. I was out of control for like 10 seconds.
Causing multiple rollovers and spinouts. This SUV helplessly sliding into parked cars, sending it coasting down a neighborhood street.
Couldn't stop the car, it was so icy.
Even the sidewalk was dangerous. And a lot of snow came down as well. Killington, Vermont, although you will take it up there in the ski resort, 14 inches. Take that. Albany, only 1.5 inches. So it really depends on where you are. And more snow coming down today, especially here in the higher elevations. Even around Buffalo, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus County, Syracuse, going to pick up another foot of snow. Now, that foot of snow is not going to get down to New York City. It's not going to get to Philadelphia. But there will be flurries in the sky in New York for effect, I guess, for the next couple days as the storm does come, just sits there and spins for a while before it finally exits. The next story we'll be talking about is a major storm in the west. We'll get to that in the next couple days, but this will put feet of snow in the Sierra, rain on the desert, parched areas of Northern California. They really need this storm. They just don't need the flooding that's going to come with it.
Good evening. It got very dark very early this afternoon. There was more dangerous hail and heavy rain as Sydney was battered by storms yet again. The bad weather's causing trouble right across the state. On the far south coast, 5 people were rescued from a raging flood.
Throughout the afternoon, the latest storm fronts have seen hail hammering down. The northern suburbs and northern beaches particularly copping a battering. This was at Waitara, as Sydney-siders found themselves handling hailstones almost golf ball sized. As the system moved across the north, it brought a bucketing to St Ives, enough to turn backyards white. It's also where this tree was toppled, triggering one of more than 100 calls for help to state emergency service volunteers in the last few hours. On the south coast, rescue came from above, from the river left raging by torrential rain. Near Moruya yesterday, the Westpac Lifesaver helicopter was called in to winch 2 men and their 10-year-old daughters to safety. They'd been on a canoeing trip when the river became too dangerous, swelled by falls in the area of around 260 millimetres. Rescues too in Sydney as the storm swept through yesterday, quickly swamping some roads and leaving cars stranded. The SES were called in to save a driver at Padstow. They warned driving through the flash flooding isn't worth the risk.
Don't ever think that you can get through it because that time may not happen for you. So either find an alternative route or pull over and wait until it subsides.
In Birrong, the heavy rain ran like a river into Amiria's home. Another neighbour had to be rescued.
It was crazy. It was just gushing through. It went all the way through. It went through here, through the kitchen, in our lounge room and in all 3 bedrooms.
Around the corner at the local IGA supermarket, the overwhelming rain burst through the ceiling, washing through the store, leaving another big clean-up.
Straight away, everyone, we asked them to move away from the water and to stay away somewhere safe.
The conditions delivered other dangers. At St Mary's, this car lost control in the wet, slamming into a tree. Then there's been this week's lightning.
Wow! Whoa!
Uma Pekkanen just a few cars behind when the bolt felled the tree onto another vehicle.
It was shocking. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
In Prestons, the shock came from a power pole fire.
See, it's going to blow. Move.
This afternoon, small localised storms have been forming across Sydney, coming from the northwest. This rain started near Hornsby before travelling down the upper and lower north shores and here into the city. As the black line of storms crossed over the beaches late today, it was coastal suburbs taking an icy hit, copping the city's latest stormy blast. Paul Caddick, 7 News.
Sydney copped another drenching today, not as late and not as heavy as some, but still making the past week one of the wettest on record. SES and power crews have been flat out all day cleaning up the damage from fallen trees and wires, but there could be a reprieve. Paul Caddick joins us now from the airport. Paul, what's the outlook?
Well, Mark, the good news is our record run of storms is over, with a parting shot today delivering another downpour, a wind gust here at the airport of 76 kilometres an hour and another 180 calls for help to the State Emergency Service. But it will only be a short break, with storms back in the forecast later this week. Those familiar black clouds rolled in a little earlier today, but were just as intense. Temperatures at Penrith dropped 10 degrees in half an hour. Horsley Park copped a wind gust of 70 kilometres an hour, even stronger on the coast. At Beacon Hill, a 78-year-old woman was hit by lightning. She was at the sink peeling potatoes when she was struck from outside the window and thrown clear across the room. It has become Sydney's storm o'clock, and yesterday another afternoon blast of pelting rain. Battering hail. Dangerous driving conditions. Shock. And awe.
This is crazy.
Combined with stronger winds, it left scars across the suburbs, especially the north, northwest and Macarthur. At Bligh Park near Windsor, this was the damage done by a falling tree.
I've seen one storm that was pretty bad, but nothing to equal this scene anyway.
Nearby, this awning was brought crashing down on top of a 56-year-old man who was taken to Westmead Hospital with head and chest injuries in a serious but stable condition. And hospitals weren't immune. At RPA in Camperdown, big bins were wheeled in to deal with a leaking roof. At Winston Hills, Riaz Ali says his house shook when it was hit by lightning.
I saw the flash, it came right through the curtain, but the noise was exceptionally loud.
Flashing along copper pipes, the bolt sparked a fire in the wall, in the roof and in the kitchen. His wife, teenage son and elderly parents were all at home.
Just told everyone to get out of the house because the smokes were just billowing so quick, and they're toxic.
In Wahroonga, hailstones punched like bullets through this patio roof. As trees came down, friends and neighbours came to help with the clean-up. Near Parramatta, roads suddenly disappeared, leaving this driver marooned. In the harbour, this cruise ship looked like it might have been making a quick getaway. At Bondi Beach, these swimmers certainly were.
This was just one of more than 800 calls for help to the State Emergency Service after the storms went through. Volunteers have been so busy they've called in backup crews from outside Sydney to help with the clean-up and to be ready for whatever's next.
Seems Sydney-siders have been getting used to these sudden storms and everything they leave behind. Paul Caddick, 7 News.